Oh my gosh, yes, we need to record. Sorry, thank you for reminding me. I just set it up.
All right, we are now recording. So, belatedly, welcome everyone. I'm Reb Anderson, Head of Education and Storytelling at ACE, Action for the Climate Emergency, she, her pronouns. And today's presentation is live reporting from COP26, connecting with Climate Generation and their delegates, as well as Wild Center delegates. And so we've got Kristen Poppleton from Climate Generation, as well as Jen Kretzer with the Wild Center. And I don't have your official bios or abstracts open. So Jen and Kristen, I'm just going to turn it over to you all and let you take it. No virtual space, but really excited to see you all.
Hey, is my internet clear for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, it seemed like it's going in and out for some reason.
Mine was saying,
oh, is Rob
I
the
think
one
it
that's
might be
having?
Reb.
Okay. The irony of it all. Hey, well, and I also Jen and I have semi-prepared to talk to you all. But I also just want to acknowledge Rob just came back, so she has plenty to contribute. And I see that Betsy is on, who is one of our week 1 delegates, and I'd love for her to share. And I think I saw Frank is here too, and Frank definitely, all of these folks were there. So it's, anyone can talk. As you can tell, maybe we are wiped. It's day 11 for me. It's day 100 for Jen, I think. And so we pulled together some pictures, and maybe we can just walk. Jen, you want to just go through them, or I guess I should introduce myself and then Jen, you can, and then should we do that?
Sure. And I think, I think there's some maybe some high level things that we could talk about at the beginning. I mean, I guess that's what I was sort of thinking about from where we are sitting right now in the negotiations, if I can pull myself out of the logistics of being here for a couple seconds. Go ahead, Kristen.
I'm Kristen Poppleton. I am the Senior Director of Programs with Climate Generation. And we bring a delegation to the COP every year. We don't always staff it. This is the year we have had 2 weeks of delegates. So last week we had 3 delegates, and they took off on Sunday. And on Sunday we had 3 new delegates show up. And they are all representing the work of ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment, which we'll talk a little bit about more from very different perspectives and sectors, I would say. And I am coming to you currently from my room in Glasgow. I had thought about doing this from the negotiations, but I needed to go home today and be somewhere comfy. And Jen, why don't you take it away? And if you want to give, it sounds like you're ready to give an update, which is awesome. If that's
we'll see about that. No, so hi everybody.
You're on mute.
Oh, am I?
No, I can hear her.
Okay. So hi everybody, I'm Jen Kretzer, Director of Climate Initiatives from the Wild Center. I am here with Gina, who's on our delegation, but of course also works for CLEAN, as I think most of you know. And we, so I've been here for a while here in Scotland, and I think that there's a lot to talk about with this COP. And I'm not entirely sure where to start, but from a high level or maybe on the ground perspective, there's 2 different things happening here. One is what's happening in the negotiation space, and one is what's not happening in the negotiation space, and not just outside of COP, but it's been called I guess I'll start with this because it's so present in my brain space. It's been called the most exclusive COP ever, you know, in part because of COVID and the restrictions on the numbers of people that can be in rooms and the numbers of people that can participate. But that is really like so starkly clear in the blue zone space where most of us are and are badged and in that space. So I feel like the inequities around COP are a major headline, and I've seen the headlines of it as I try to keep up with the news. So that's something that is happening, and it's very real and very present. And of course, there's also the negotiations, and we're not done. It's week 2. We're still trying to reach the goals of COP and have countries commit to staying, continue to push towards staying below 1.5, to close the gap on emissions, to finance climate, to work together, to mitigate loss and damage. And it's a tough road. I mean, we've seen I think it was in the was it the Washington Post broke a story about the actual emissions versus what countries are reporting. I think I see Seth nodding. So I'm pretty sure that came out maybe last night or this morning or yesterday, that there was a major reporting released by the Washington Post that most countries are way, way, way underreporting what's happening in terms of their emissions, which is really difficult to see and sort of okay, well, if that's true, then what? And then it's thanks, Seth, for dropping that in. So that's something that's a challenge to see. There's also, I think, Kristen had, I think, noted yesterday on one of our various WhatsApp channels that keeps us all coordinated and somewhat sane here, that, there's close to 500 fossil fuel lobbyists in the House that are badged and delegate and are considered delegates. And if that was a country, it'd be the largest country delegation here. And that's also really difficult to see. So there's clearly some real challenges on the COP front. On the other hand, I also want to just acknowledge the incredible power of the people that are here and the delegations that are here and the work that they're doing, the people that are showing up, there are protests, there are demonstrations, there are people pushing with their voices and their song and their art, and it's just incredible. And the relationship building and the connecting across, particularly in the civil society spaces and also in the blue zone, is unbelievable. And I'm so moved by that and overwhelmed by it. But it makes me, it restores my faith in humanity, that, just to be able to, walk in the streets with, just music and people and over 100,000 people 2 days in a row marching in the streets, demanding change and unrelenting on that. And so there are so many good people here doing really, really good and important work across sectors. So I guess right now that's kind of where my brain is. And Kristen, I don't know if you want to add to that, or also Reb, Frank, Betsy, Gina, any thoughts on sort of that sort of big picture stuff I just laid out?
Yeah, I mean, what you said is so true. That's what I'm sort of leading into, is the people part, because and that's also where the sort of despair falls into. It's just so disconnected, the people, and then the sort of negotiating part of things. But there's a lot of people here that are just pushing for amazing stuff, and the people in our network that are working their butts off to promote the people-centered and justice-centered work that we do is pretty phenomenal. And I will say, one of the things for me, which we can talk about, that is I found to be actually really awesome, is it's all of the work that we're all doing with the ACE Coalition, as well as some of the work that my organization is on the periphery of, but supporting in Minnesota, which is around Minnesota's Line 3 pipeline. All of those things were topics ACE and that Line 3 work, which is also ACE, is public, it's participation, it's environmental defenders, was something the US Climate Action Center has wanted to promote and support. And so that's not the US Center, that's not like our State Department, but the US Climate Action Center are the folks that stepped in when the federal action was not coming forward to connect all the people across the United States, and that and promote subnational actors and promote subnational work. And so that they see, first of all, that ACE is an integral part of that work, like doing education, training, public participation, like that needs to be centered. And not only one, but 3 panels that really centered that work they brought in. And also 4, they also that they wanted to actually like feature like indigenous led resistance was really it's hopeful. Like these are the folks that are pushing the public participation and the subnational actors and the things that need to get done. So that to me is also a point of hope of like that we have these folks that are really pushing and bringing people together to share that good stuff. So yeah, any other reflections from Betsy or Frank? Or
I see Frank has his hand up. Go ahead, Frank.
I think you got it. Yep, there you go.
I got it. Forgive me, I'm recovering from a 19-hour flight, so it's it's fun. Yeah, you know, one of the things, Annette and I were actually in Scotland starting on the 13th, so we had some time to travel around and meet with people, in addition to just doing the regular tourist things. And, you know, one of the things I would really want to give a shout out for is Scottish people in this. I mean, not only are they great folks and just in terms of being friendly and helpful and all this other good stuff, but the impression I got, which was very different than Poland and even somewhat different than Bonn, was that there was an awful lot of grassroots support in the Scottish populace for having this COP there, even as exclusive and as chaotic and as crazy as it has turned out to be. And one of the things I really began to realize out of this particular COP is that we tend to like to look at COPs as just what the UNFCCC does in their little microcosm. And in Scotland, it was, you had what the UNFCCC did in their little microcosm, what UK was sort of doing over in Green Zone, but you move out from there and there's all the stuff that Climate Fringe was doing. And then you move out even further from that and you have what Climate Reality was doing with their climate cafes. And it really gave me a very different perspective on the COPs that I've gotten from the previous 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I think Gina's going to pop in, but thanks, Frank, for saying that, because there are so many events. The COP26 Coalition, the People's Summit, where Kristen's delegation spoke yesterday, Climate Fringe, the New York Times Hub, tons of just like art stuff happening all over the city. Like it is, and the Scottish people I've also found to be like incredibly engaged and like wanting to see change. Like everyone I've talked to a lot of Scottish people over the last few weeks, like just meeting them on the street or wherever, like they are like, we really hope you're going there. We really hope something's going to happen. Like, is something going to happen? Like everyone, like every single person, from the cab drivers to like the shopkeepers, like everyone is engaged. And I've never had that experience before and talking with the general public. And that's been actually quite refreshing to be able to talk to climate change with pretty much everybody, and that they bring it up. I'm not the one bringing it up. So I'm going to let Gina have a say.
I just wanted to build on what Jen said earlier in the fact that it seems like there's two COPs, and it's really frustrating because I spoke on one of the youth panels on Saturday, and the messaging by the other people on the panel, was so good. And so what people need to hear, so much what people need to hear, but it feels like we're preaching to the choir a little bit because everyone in the blue zone, well, except for the fossil fuel companies, maybe if they were in the room, but like, I don't know, most people that are at COP and went through the trouble of getting badged in the blue zone care about climate change. And we were in Paris for a couple of days, but this is the first COP that we've figured out how to actually get into the negotiation space. But it's frustrating because the things that are being said in the blue zone and the green zone and out like on the streets are things that the negotiators need to hear, but they're not hearing. And I've just been thinking a lot about how, we kind of expected with the last administration for stuff like that to happen, but we had really high hopes for Biden's administration, and the US Center, which is all Department of State run, really only has, it's not involving anyone other than government employees on the panels. They don't have anyone speaking other than,
Well, they did have the CEOs of some energy companies.
okay, yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
It's just
Just saying.
it's hard. Yeah. And I think, so Kristen, I liked what you said. I hadn't heard the US Climate Action Center framed, it's the America's All In group, which of course came about, when we pulled out of Paris. But I just think it's interesting that even with the new administration, which was supposed to be so much better, it seems everyone is still frustrated here. Like it's the same old stuff is still happening. So not to be a downer, but I have been thinking about that a lot.
If I can build on that, I think something that stood out to me that was hard to see was the level of double talk coming out of some of the US administration officials in terms of like really high and lofty rhetoric, and then several examples of like, one being not signing on to the phasing out coal group pledge that came out last week, and we all know why that happened because of a specific senator from West Virginia. So that kind of double talk has, and I think it's in both what is said and being said or not being said or not being committed to by different countries. It's also like very apparent in the blue zone. I think a lot of us walked past the Australia booth that had like this like weird thing around like showing fracking at their booth. So there's like a lot of greenwashing going on, which I guess should not have surprised me, but maybe did catch me off guard a little bit. So that was like something that felt, me coming in as my first COP, like pretty inexperienced, like that element of it. I was, and I hadn't thought about it ahead of time, but I was kind of caught me by surprise and was hard to stomach. Yeah, Betsy.
Yeah, so I just got home too. I don't even remember what day it was since it took forever to get home. But, one thing that I want to echo a little bit of what Jen said, the hashtag they had over there was hashtag Together for the Planet. And I felt that just being around the people, marching with all the people, that there is this great movement and being part of that movement. and just engaging people. You know, when I listened to the youth speak throughout there, I was just amazed. I can probably say I'm probably on the end of the baby boomer generation, and I was never that articulate or that driven at the age that these young people are. And, you know, and I really feel for them having this giant burden on them every day and not wanting to have to do this work, but they feel like they have to do this work. And, you know, as I think it was Aisha that said in that panel, you know, we're here for love of the people and love of planet. And what I want to see more is taking all this momentum and bringing it back into our communities. You know, what really scares me is that reducing the emissions by half by 2030, you know, that is a big effort that needs to happen. And that's going to be, you know, beyond individual efforts. And one of the things I saw last night on the local news, like a commercial pops up and here's Kristen Sinema, my senator from Arizona, saying, yes, and I passed this bill. I'm like, no, you held up this bill forever. So it's a matter of just kind of taking that momentum and bringing it back to your community and just letting people know. The one thing that I've heard a lot about is there's so many ways that people can engage in this work that needs to get done. You know, you don't have to go out and march. You know, if your thing is science, do the science. If your thing is working with youth or education or developing technology, you know, or artists, you know, the amount of art and changing the culture is amazing. So I just want to get working on that in my own community after being there.
One thing I'd also love to hear people's thoughts on is another area of hope around the advances in technology side of things. I think that's not something that we focus on so much in this community, but I sat next to a professor from MIT on the flight home who was very on the tech side of things, and either I was just exhausted or just like super burned out and cynical at that point. And he was like citing all these clean tech examples of like, you know, he's on that side of the aisle in terms of like he sees hope in the energy sector and in renewables and in technology. And I think I'm more on the human power side of the equation, but I think that so I've just sort of been thinking about exploring that side of it, and like, is there opportunity there that's coming from the tech side of the equation, or any other thoughts about that sort of duality?
Reb, I see that connection between the work that you guys are doing, we are doing on the people side and the tech side combined. That's actually one of the most exciting. Oh, Siri thinks I'm talking to it. That's one of the most exciting. I'm not sure I understand. I just said, shut up. You know, because I think the key for a lot of the communities that we represent that are really hard is jobs, is benefit. Climate solutions are not, it's going to be hard to figure out storage. And, you know, if we're going to deploy 500,000 charging stations across the country as part of, you know, the EV transformation, as part of the infrastructure bill, that's work. And somebody's got to do that work. And that's just we're just getting started. Living shorelines, like, how do we do that? We're just tinkering at the edge of that. So I think, you know, but ultimately it's people that do that work, that support that work, that approve bonds that do that work. So everything we're doing is critical to what that person you were sitting next to is hoping goes in massive transformation, because it won't happen without people. But if the tech don't exist, it won't happen either.
I did see that Abby. Hi, Abby. So glad that you're here. Had a couple comments in the chat, and I just want to acknowledge that. One was, sounds like important seeds planted towards coherence across scale to up-level policy and action in a more simultaneous way in the future. And then if so, what's your view on the next best opportunity or series of opportunities to leverage what happened at COP26 and then the next stops on the marathon? And marathon it is.
I have something to say about that, I think.
Okay, you go.
Well, it's the thing. So it's interesting this being here. I feel like as part of especially this ACE coalition, we've all been sort of figuring out like our roles in this group, the folks that are here. And we've got some folks which are not me, which are like the policy savvy, like advocates, and who are going to elected officials and going to like in like nonprofit, like shopping ACE, like getting people excited about ACE, and they're doing like unbelievable, amazing work. I would say in that respect. But we also have here, I don't know what we're up to on the WhatsApp group now. I think we're at like 65, 70 folks who have like joined this ACE delegation, who are, some of them like ACE is like, it's, I can't tell you, well, I could probably tell you it's like 3 or 4 times, but it's still phenomenal. Like I've heard people saying like, I didn't know about this. I am so excited about this. Like, this is the work I do. And I never knew that like, this was a thing, like excited to like feel like they have a place in this work. And that is what like the work I do, which is more like working with people and like developing networks and collaborations and like building community. That's like where I work. I'm excited to be thinking about how are we going to take this group that's kind of newbies, like they're not going to probably be engaging in like the policy piece, but like connecting them and figuring out how we sustain this. And so I'm hoping we have the capacity. I know like I like to do to get on that as soon as we can when this is over, because I think there's a real need for us to say, hey, to like connect and say, what's next? What do you need? What do we want to do? How can we stay connected? So that is something that I think is like there and ripe and ready to roll. Jen, you got something?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to add, I think, and I saw Frank with his hand up, Frank Granshaw with his hand up too, but I think that the opportunity, I mean, just the fact that, I mean, Haley Cram, I don't know if folks here on this call know Haley, who's part of the ACE Coalition delegation, and Azatis and Deb Morrison and others. And, along with, I guess, myself and just like every time we see an elected official, we are in front of them talking about ACE, like literally, like, I mean, yesterday it was, the administrator for NOAA and the head of Health and Human Services and like senators. Today I met with our New York State head of environment. Like, it's like as many people we can talk to about ACE as possible, and to get them to understand like using ACE, the idea of ACE, the 6 pillars of ACE, as a frame from which to sort of think about the work that needs to be done across the whole of society, like in their particular realms of influence, is like absolutely critical. And we need to continue to refine that message and to advance it and then connect it. And I think, I can't remember who said this today. I think it was Felicia Davis, an unbelievable ACE Coalition person, who spoke this morning on the BIPOC. We had a BIPOC event at the U.S. Climate Action Center on reporting out on the Justice 40, and also just like how do we advance climate justice in the U.S. in a very concrete way, and those recommendations, but said that we need to find those networks, we need to connect those networks, and then we need to shine a light on where those connections are. I think that I'm getting that right. And then, so anyway, I hope that answers your question, Abby, or we can like keep talking about this because answers the question and it's like, and we got to do this. So like figuring out that strategy and actually having a strategy like written out, like this is what we're going to do next. And this is how we're going to advance this work next. Like that, to me, that's the next step. I'm speaking for myself, but yeah. And I see that Don has his hand up.
Yeah, and just a quick word connecting the idea earlier of preaching to the choir and maybe being a little bit frustrated by that. I think it's profoundly important to preach to the choir with a good chunk of our time, hopefully not the majority of it, but what has been said in the last few minutes, I think, falls into that category. It's revealing stuff to us that we in the choir don't know about and gaining perspectives that we didn't have. And I'll note that my grandfather was a Presbyterian minister and my mom dragged us to church every Sunday for the first 18 years of my life and told me when I was in my 40s and she was 80 or so, that she didn't believe in God and hadn't in decades. She wasn't actually in the choir, but she might as well have been. I mean, she went to church every Sunday of her life up until she moved into a home. And I think those parallels are worth thinking about. We need to preach to one another about the stuff that we're doing and not be too bothered by that.
Frank Granch, I see you have your hand up. I don't know if that's old or or new.
There we go. Nope, that was new. You know, one thing about this COP that, in terms of anything we say about it, is just the sheer, what would you call it? Technical difficulty of trying to do a conference with 30,000 people in the midst of a pandemic. I really was hesitating to come to this COP because of that reason, but I figured I'd give it a try. And I will give the Secretariat in the UK kudos for dealing with it and dealing with something that was a really thorny problem. That said, I was thinking about, Jen, something you were saying earlier in terms of the tech side of things. And I sort of hold up as the gold standard for exhibit area of all the COPs that I've been to, COP23, because it was the one place where you found little booths for little NGOs mixed in with the nation pavilions. And this one, it seemed to be just the big names, the people with the big checkbooks. And I don't know if that was a deliberate or if that was a product of COVID. But I do find that, and going back to what Don and Frank were saying, this idea of trying to inform those of us in the choir. And was something I felt like I could walk out of the exhibit area in COP23 feeling that I learned a lot. This one, yeah, somewhat, but not really. But I don't know where to put the blame for that one.
Questions from those of you who haven't, or comments, thoughts from those of you on the outside of COP, maybe from your perspectives, what you've seen come through in the news or what hasn't come through?
We also have pictures if people want to see pictures.
There's a lot of hands up. I see Frank.
Oh, is there
and then
more?
Yeah,
Eric
those
and
just
Jim.
came. Eric, how about I go to you first because we haven't heard your voice yet. Or I stepped out for a couple minutes. I don't think we have.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, I've been watching it remotely and really appreciate the call and you all that are there sharing your experiences, because I wanted to go and have never been but I think the power of, to me, when we kind of riffing off of the technology stuff that was going on in chat, this is a way that we can globally kind of push out what's happening at COP, because a lot of the dings are, well, you've got Leonardo DiCaprio flying in his jet and Obama going in his jet, all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, but it's this whole finger pointing. I mean, we all travel, we all have carbon footprints. This is one significant conference which we all are invested in. But I think the power of technology to me is pushing out what you all are doing in the way that we're doing it today, and I think that's a piece that I think we can keep pushing on. And also wanted to get on screen to show Frank I got something in the mail. So anyway, yeah, just really appreciate you all representing us there, and just the work that's going on globally and constantly. COP is once a year, but we know that this is a 365 effort. And yeah, really just thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Jim or Frank, I don't know which of you was hand up first.
I've spoken more recently.
Okay. Thanks, Reb. One I'm very eager to hear is from those who are at COP. I mean, I was doing it kind of online and things, is what are some of the best we heard from around the world? What are things that others are doing, students, teachers, programs like this? And just with it, thank you all who went to COP, because you represented the best of what we have to share from the United States. What did we hear? What did we learn from the other what do you call focal point folks and things? I mean, last time, by the way, Frank was bringing up of real learning between the focal points and real great things. I know they have a lot to learn from Frank, and I know Frank was listening a lot to them. So it's just, I mean, there's great stuff going on, even when it's not happening at the Senate level in the countries or something, right? And we do what we can do. So, thanks.
Frank, do you want to respond to that?
No, I'm incredibly interested to hear the answer from all the U.S. ACE coalition members or who were there. What did you see that others were doing that aren't in the United States? And what do we have to, because the key word in Article 12 of the Paris Agreement is collaboration, which means you got to learn from each other in order to collaborate. So I'd love to hear if there's any amazing ACE work that you heard about. That's not my question, by the way. Then I would love to know, what is that?
Well, one thing.
I had
you posted
yeah,
it in the
go
chat.
ahead,
Oh, sorry. Oh, just that, there was an event featuring the ministers of education and environment, of which the US was not present. So I think that one concrete action, going back to Abby's comment earlier, would be to see what can we push to get Gina McCarthy and whoever else we need to get on this to have something to bring to the table on education for COP27. That will probably take a year to make that happen, but that would be one.
I actually did. That was connects to what I was just going to share, which is that someone whose name I can't remember at this moment, but from Egypt came by our pavilion and spoke about them wanting to bring education work to the fore at the next year's COP, which is going to be in Egypt. And that's about the extent of it. I'm hoping that they follow up with me, but they're hoping to do some organizing of this community and the ACE community for the next COP in Egypt. Anyone else have examples of any international examples they encountered?
Well, I'll go ahead and pop in here. I just want to repeat myself in terms of the incredible work that the folks in Scotland were doing. Because I really think that what was happening with Fringe and the climate cafes and everything else is a good example of moving beyond this notion that the civil society zone in the COPs stops at what the UNFCCC provides. I mean, because I think it stretches a lot further than that. And incidentally, one of the things that I had discovered about the climate cafe idea that climate reality chapters were doing is that they were doing that in cooperation with the Scottish government. And I keep thinking, you know, that's what we need to do here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump on that too, actually, Frank. So our delegation, our first week delegates were focused was youth and education, because youth and education week was, or day. What if we had a week? That'd be awesome. Youth and education day was on Friday. And then our second week of delegates is an indigenous delegation from the Dakota and Anishinaabe people in Minnesota and North Dakota. And they were able to, they put in a proposal for a presentation to the People's Climate Justice Summit, which is being called the Counter COP, and it's through the COP Coalition. And did that yesterday. And it was, I mean, it was like phenomenal. You can watch it on our Facebook page if you want. It was Lauren streamed the whole thing. And it was like high level and heart, and like when we're saying we need to be centering Indigenous voices and Indigenous knowledge, it's like, why is this happening outside the COP? But there was no place for this to fit, you know, in the COP. There's nowhere to do that presentation. We couldn't submit that to the US Center. We couldn't. It was phenomenal. And so having that, and I actually did participate a little bit in COP21, the People's Climate Summit was happening then too. And as I recall, it also had some pretty phenomenal things going on. And it shouldn't be a fringe. It should be part of the things that are going on. It's where like the work that we're saying we're supposed to be doing is happening. And I will also say that the youth panel that we were able to support on Saturday that Gina was on, as well as a number of other just rocking all-star youth activists, was sort of stuck on a Saturday night. And also, once again, we're saying we're centering these youth voices, but it wasn't necessarily that well attended. And so those are the two that I really, I think the two sessions that I've been to that I was most excited about and to hear, and also just to follow the youth voice. They're really pushing, even though they're not getting in, they're very vocal this time. And that's kind of encouraging to watch as well.
I was going to say that session that we sat in on the plenary with the education ministers, Frank put the link in the chat earlier. There is some positive things that came out of that, and I would like to go back and rewatch it just to catch it all, especially when all the different nations put up their video, because it went by so fast. But one of the ones that really stuck in my head was the delegate from the UK, the young delegate Phoebe Hansen, that did the mock COP. You know, she talked about investing in your teachers, and coming from a state that doesn't do that. You know, it was just amazing. And that, you know, co-develop this with, you know, curriculum that we want to do with the youth, and then, you know, integrated across it. And it just resounded with so many of the ACE principles that, you know, I saw before. That was amazing. And then a lot of the countries, you know, showed examples where they were getting kids out into nature and getting kids out there doing things, you know, the whole action competency learning. That was amazing. Colombia said a good story. I'm not sure if they're really doing it, but that was, you know, they brought up human rights and justice and intergenerational education. So things like that, like I said, I wouldn't mind going back and rewatching that now that you gave me the link.
Betsy, if you don't mind, actually it relates to my question, because Jen, you brought it up. COP27, the ministers focusing on education at a president level is the first time that's ever happened at a COP, COP26. And so I think the chances of that happening again next year are high. And I think 50 nations had contributions. And there are photographs in social media of the US chair empty at that event. As an ACE focal point, we never heard of the request for us to attend that event. It would probably go to our Secretary of Education. We're trying to track that down. But it does open a bigger question, is if the United States, not the US government, but the United States pledged, what would we pledge? It wouldn't just be K-12, it wouldn't just be higher education, it wouldn't be just civil society, it would be complicated, it would be multi-leveled. Governors have a bigger play in this sometimes than presidents, but what would our pledge be? And I think we do have a clock that's started to build a better pledge than what would have probably been said if somebody was sitting in the US chair. And so I think that I wouldn't, as a government person who has an official role in this work, I wouldn't want to be the only one creating that pledge. I think it is a shared pledge. It's a multi-level pledge. It's a distributed pledge. It's a complicated pledge if it's a real pledge. And so what the education minister of the UK said was awesome, but is it durable? Is it real? And will it actually happen in doing what you said, Betsy, about honoring the teachers to actually do this heavy lift with their students? So I think it's a charge. I couldn't think of a better group to bring it to than the one that I'm looking at right now.
Sorry, could you say that again? I'm having trouble here.
All right, clearly that lady, I gotta do something.
Oh, Siri.
I don't know what happened, but you know what I mean. The punchline just got lost, but you know what I mean. I think we need to take up the charge as a group and see if we can advance that at many levels.
Frank,
I'm sorry, Frank, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat
what your robot said to you? What your robot said to you, I heard her, was say it again. Just when you said that key thing that this group is the group you want to look to for that, say it again.
Yeah, but I mean, I put this to actually Tim Carter right before the higher education side event that Second Nature was leading. And I haven't watched it yet, but I mean, he knew that because higher education's got a big play in this work. It's not just, the stuff we do. It's more distributed than that. So I think it's just an interesting thing to ponder, but not for too long, of how would we design a US pledge that is the right pledge. We're a complicated country, and it can't just be, the President of the United States or the Secretary of Education makes a statement. That's not.
So Frank, are you saying a pledge for ACE? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, the way these were set up is it was education. So it was a piece of ACE, but ACE relates to other elements of ACE than just education. So, or education relates to other elements. I don't know. We'd have to set up the task, but I do think it is an interesting question, and it's got a year, right? We got a year to develop something that is better. And I'd like to do it with the government and around the government, as opposed to just the government comes up with something. You guys are so amazing. Why would we think we would do it better than just us?
Thanks, Frank. And I think we've learned that if we wait for the government to either take the lead or even to ask for our input, then we're going to be just waiting. So it's better to go ahead and start the process and then say, here you go. We worked on this already. We've already had a lot of thoughts put together on what this pledge could look like.
The first time we did that worked out beautifully.
Yeah. Which time was that,
Katie, did you have something to say? I'm sorry, Rem.
I
I missed you, Katie.
No, I was just making a joke to Frank, and the moment passed. It's totally fine.
I think we've also had a couple of folks join that were not here at the beginning. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, go ahead. And then Wakajira, I don't want to mess up your name, but there is a couple requests in the chat to respond or for you to elaborate on your comment about the COP26 coalition and the People's Health hearing.
Hi, I'm Nathan and I'm here with Nightingale. So yeah, thanks for the chance to share. We're closely connected with Nancy and Emily and work in the Central Coast region of California, but also with children and have a strong connection network in Africa. So we're already looking a lot at COP27 and Egypt and trying to essentially ensure that some of the weak points, which we posted a couple of quotes from the People's Health hearing where they said they're intending to carry forward the People's Health hearing approach. So hopefully next year it'll continue. This year was the first. They also commented how the official COP this year was one of or the most exclusive COPs ever. And I think that's very much in line with the observations that are being shared here. So what I feel is that we have an opportunity to basically translate theory into practice and say where there are gaps and opportunities, we can do our best to go to work in the United States locally, but also at the global coalition level with the sharing of best practices that are so essential to break through some of the rigid divides that we have in the United States. So People's Health Movement was one of the main organizations that hosted the People's Health hearing, and they have a great global network. So essentially a lot of opportunities to build on. And Nightingale, I'm not sure if you want to share any more, but
Yeah, no, I think Nathan, you've shared most of it. It's also just listening to what's ongoing, thinking about looking at what's happening here at home. So currently in the US, but also the other side of me is actually Africa, because that's where I come from. So that's, like that tree that I remember when I was a little girl. And so it's thinking about that I can't get in anywhere without we. And so as we move forward, specifically in the United States or in the UK or, North, the global North, also think about what's happening in the global South and how we can, as much as possible, however difficult it is, collaboratively work towards, a better world.
And I think that's really operationalizing the ACE framework. So we've got a perfect base on which to build.
Thank you both, and thanks for joining. And thanks for those links also I knew about the People's Summit for Climate Justice, but not about the Health Hearing Day. All right, we are just about at time. Any final reflections or thoughts before we sign off? I know this is not the end, but the launching point for more work between
I just
now
want
and our
to thank
next step.
those of you that were there, who were there, because I know that on top of the stress and excitement of doing the work that you were there for, you had to do a lot of additional running around and COVID testing and protocols and transit issues, and that just added a multiplier of stress, I'm sure. And I'm amazed that you all look so well and fairly alert, because you must be very, very exhausted and jet lagged. and it's lovely to see your faces, and it was fun watching you from however many hours. I never did quite figure it out away I was.
Sometimes it was 5, sometimes it was 4. Like it was hard to know, depended on
Right.
the day. Thank you, Ginger, for saying that.
Coast, so it was 7 or 8 for me.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was in my East Coast brain.
Yeah. And there was the weird time change thing where the time change went there 2 weekends ago and then here this last weekend. So it actually it added to the, at least you just look at your phone and your phone tells you where you are and what time it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, Ginger. I think that's a great note to end on. And thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jen and Gina and Kristen and Frank and everyone else who presented, as well as all of you for contributing. I feel like this was a great conversation with, I think, participation from almost everyone here, which is a really wonderful thing to see. So thank you, everybody. There's still a few more days left, so stay tuned. I'm sure that we'll be putting things out on the network listserv, as well as on, Kristen's putting her website in there, as well as on socials and YouTube. So it's not over, and like, let's see what happens in the next few days in terms of what they come out of it with.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you all.